Hey everybody, how's it going? If you're new here, welcome. My name is Amanda, and if you are coming back and hanging out with me, hey, I appreciate it. I just want to say thank you to all of the people who engaged with me on my last video. I got a lot of new subscribers on that video and a lot of comments and likes, and I just wanted to know that I am a real person who really appreciated that engagement. I started this YouTube channel just for fun. I do have a full-time job. Plus I have 2 children and I'm married and all of the other things that life has to offer. So doing this YouTube channel and receiving that type of engagement and views, it did make me feel really rewarded that I'm investing my time into a community of people that want engagement and want to still find connection. So I just wanted to call out that I am very grateful and you made me feel very happy. But what I would like to talk about in today's video is the differences between a sphagnum moss pole and a Coco Coir moss pole. So before you got into moss poles or before you were moving away from them, I just thought it might be beneficial to go over the differences that moss poles offer and why they're beneficial to certain types of plants within your collection. I do have 2 plants next to me. One is on a sphagnum moss pole, a thickly pole, and one is on a Coco Coir pole. So I find that there are benefits to each of them. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start with the sphagnum moss pole just because that's the one I have the most experience with. Newman. This is Newman. There's a big old teddy bear. And see how he like puts his little teeth out? Like he literally smiles at you. Okay, Newman, can I please finish this? This is my beautiful Philodendron Florida Ghost. I absolutely love this plant. I think that I have a really pretty like minty variegation on this one. But I thought this one had a good representation of what a sphagnum moss pole is supposed to offer you in your collection and why it's beneficial. So this one, since it gives the plant the ability to anchor in, I don't know how well you're gonna see that, but see how there's this aerial root right up here? It wants to anchor in to this moss. And when it anchors into that moss, it gets the support that it needs, but it also signals to the plant like, hey, this is your natural environment. Please begin full maturity now. So if you do want your plant to size up and to reach its full potential, I don't think that you necessarily can do that with a Coco Coir pole. If you know, a caveat or an exception to that is if you have a plant that's already in a mature form and you decide to take it off of a pole and transfer it onto a Coco Coir pole, you may be able to maintain that level of size, but I don't think growth would continue since there's nowhere for those aerial roots to anchor in. Another important thing to note when it comes to aerial roots, not only do they anchor into the moss, but they're able to take nutrients out of this moss. So that's why it's important to keep this hydrated. This is not the best example in that sense because I have one of my old watering globes on it and this one doesn't take as much water. So this pole normally, oh my gosh, that fly. This pole normally does dry out faster. So I also need to water it and tie this up. This one needs some help. Okay, that's why we're talking about her. But anywho, once the aerial root is inside of the sphagnum moss, those aerial roots will be able to take micronutrients out of the sphagnum moss. So if you're fertilizing, you know, your water or you're adding additional nutrients, it will be able to absorb that. And that also encourages the growth on your plant is because it's able to get the nutrients that it needs from the base, but as well from this post, if that's what you want to call it, stem, along the moss pole for those additional nutrients. The last thing that I think is important when it comes to a sphagnum moss pole, just in terms of the pole itself, is when you have a plant rooted and anchored into a moss pole, what that does typically is it makes it so all of the internodal spacing on your plant is consistently separated. Now, it doesn't always happen. Every once in a while, you'll have like a node that doesn't put out a leaf. But in doing that and keeping everything anchored, what you're doing is lifting your plant up. And so by having your plant up, not only are you giving it a natural environment, you're getting it closer to the grow light, but you are also keeping it in a very good state of air circulation. And I know that that might not seem like a really good benefit of a sphagnum moss pole, but if you have a lot of plants like I do, making sure that your plants are in an environment where they have a lot of circulation so that things are not chilling on the top of their leaves, you know, it's a really good way for pest prevention. It keeps all of the leaves up, it keeps everything nice and tight and together, so you don't have as much overlap or as much ability for dust or pests or spider mites or something to get in there, because everything is out and ventilated, and it is a huge win. The other thing that I personally like about sphagnum moss poles is you can see the roots in the back. So you can see all of these roots back here that have grown in from this pole. I think that that's really interesting. I think it's really cool to be able to view that. I also think it's really fun if you were looking to propagate your plants, or you're looking to maybe sell your plants. If they are rooted in a sphagnum moss pole, essentially what you could do is cut in between the nodes, and when you remove that section from the moss, you already have established roots and a new plant that you can either share with your friend, sell, or pop back up into your mother plant. So I do think there are a lot more benefits to a sphagnum moss pole, especially if you want to get mature growth. And that is also why I grabbed this one. So when I first got this Florida Beauty, it was a lot smaller. The original leaves have fallen off, but there was a change from this form to this form, and then now I have the full mature form. And I do find that that happens very quickly because I'm using a sphagnum moss pole. Now, the cons with a sphagnum moss pole is, the first one is I feel like they're very expensive. Sphagnum moss, you know, if you're getting good quality long fiber sphagnum moss, it is pretty expensive, and investing in something like a thickly pole is just that. It's an investment. I tried using like the DIY poles where you made them with plastic or wire poles, and honestly, in my environment, it's just so dry in here that I couldn't keep them moist to save my life, and I just ended up giving up on having moss poles. I really recommend thickly poles. They're very easy to assemble. I will link my video that I just did. I added a couple of moss pole extensions so that you can see how I assemble them, the moss that I use, and how you can attach additional sections to your moss pole. That would be Newman. The initial investment for these poles is a lot more than other types of poles. I do think the usability of these makes them worth it. If you're going to get into moss poles, it is a lot of work, which I think would be my second point. For these moss poles, I have to use my watering globes twice a week. I only water through my moss pole though. I do not water the base of my plant anymore. So I think that's part of why my plants need so much moisture, is that's where the aerial roots as well as the roots in the bottom, like the base roots, get their nutrients. So it does take up a lot of water. But when it comes to like aesthetics or just being able to bring out the true beautiful form, I don't think that you can get any better than a sphagnum moss pole. This would be my recommendation if you are looking to upsize your plants and get mature growth, would be to use sphagnum moss. But I know that it is an investment financially, and it's also an investment with time. So if that's not something that you are interested in, I will move on to a Coco Coir pole. So this one right here is my variegated syngonium chia pence. It reverted, so I chopped this one up. And the first leaf that came out was so beautiful. Then I got like speckled, then I got all green. So I'm hoping this one does something for me. The stem on here is so variegated, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on. But if this thing does not give me some variegation, I'm just gonna buy a new one. So get ready for an unboxing video. Just kidding. But okay, so this is like your typical traditional Coco Coir pole. The reason why I feel like these don't have the same benefit as a sphagnum moss pole is, number one, they are very hard to hydrate. So when you first get a Coco Coir pole, I think it recommends on like the instructions for you to dunk it in water for like 24 hours or something. But even if you're able to get this cocoa husk, that's what this is. It's very like abrasive. It feels almost like one of those, I don't know, I feel like my mom used them when I was a kid, but like those Brillo pad type sponge things, you know what I'm talking about? That's what this reminds me of. It is not soft in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's not going to cut you, but it doesn't seem very inviting. If I was a plant, I don't know that I would want to attach to this, is all I'm trying to say. But so even if you were to initially get it moist by leaving it in tub of water for 24 hours or a week, there really isn't a way for you to saturate this once it dries out. So once this becomes dry, I think it just kind of remains dry. That is a pro to a lot of people, that you don't have to hydrate these or mist these. But the biggest thing that you miss out on by not being able to retain moisture in here is that when your plant does start to develop aerial roots, you can see that I have some aerial roots down here. These aerial roots are not going to be able to anchor onto this, and so it's not going to help encourage that like large mature growth. The reason I have used this for my variegated syngonium is I feel like a syngonium chiapense, it doesn't necessarily need to be like a large form to be beautiful. I do think that just in general, by having support, this plant will size up on its own, but I'm fully accepting that this may not get to a full large size, and I'm fine with that. I would honestly prefer this plant to remain similar in size and just have more variegation. So that's why I opted for a Coco Coir on this particular one, because for me, the aesthetic and what I want out of this plant is more variegation rather than growth. I think that that's something as well to keep in mind when you're using a Coco Coir pole, is what are you trying to get out of your plant? Do you want less maintenance or do you want large growth? Because really, without the aerial roots being able to anchor into something, it's going to be a lot harder, I think, for you to be able to get large mature growth without being able to replicate that natural environment with live sphagnum moss, or moist sphagnum moss, I should say. Essentially what it boils down to, if I am recommending something to you, if you are looking to get a plant that has a mature form, really the only way to go is with a sphagnum moss pole. Yes, it is more money. Yes, it is more of a time investment, but I promise you, when you start to see those beautiful mature leaves and you get the type of aesthetic that you're going for, especially if it's a plant that you've always wanted in your collection and you finally get it, I don't know, I would just hate to tell you to skimp out on the work of giving it a natural environment and miss out on that like beautiful aesthetic that you've been questing after in your planty journey. You've wanted the plant for a long time, you finally have it, and now you're like, oh man, I have to do all of this. I think if you had gotten to that point and you didn't invest into the plant's proper care, you would be a little sad and let down by that wish list plant because you weren't helping it get to its full potential. You know what I mean? But just my recommendation would be, if you want large growth, if you want mature form of the plants in your collection, I would use a sphagnum moss pole, and I recommend the thickly poles. I'm not sponsored or like affiliated or anything with them, but I do feel like these ones are really user friendly. They're very easy to click into place to build. I prefer the 2.0. They do have a 3.0 version if you're interested, where these little grids in the front, they open up, so instead of having to use like the tape that I use on my plants to anchor them to the pole, you could just like put it in with those. I personally don't like the 3.0s because I feel like you have to build the pole twice, then take it apart to put the plant on it. I don't know, maybe I would like it if I tried it a little bit more, but I just feel like these ones are super sleek, so I stick with them. That is all I have for you guys regarding moss poles. I hope that it helps you decide what type of poles you would like to use with your plants. In the description, I will link what plants I think will do best on each pole, so that way it gives you kind of like a general outline. I am in no way like a plant knower of all of the things. I'm just going off of like my years of experience and what I have had success with when it comes to moss poles. If you have any questions or you'd like me to clarify anything that I talked about, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to engage with you guys and learn more about your planty care as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye.
Damn.